Today's guest on the Life Equation is a close friend of mine, somebody who hails from Finland, has been through the military by the name of Remo Christian. Remo is a very down to earth guy. He's got a lot of dedication for what he does. He's very knowledgeable of what he does. And I'm really excited to have him on to just get to know him better, to hear his perspectives on the culture of his own country, about Finland being ranked as the happiest country in the world, where he's going in life right now, and everything in between. I was really excited to have him on the show today, and I hope you guys enjoy the episode.
You talked about you being kind of a reserved kind of guy as well, but we all have our surprising strengths in a lot of situations. Like in your example, you said that you're kind of reserved kind of guy, but when taking up to the Aces commentary, an example, I think you're a great commentator in Aces. Like it brings up the emotion and spirit there. So that just kind of shows that even one person might be reserved, then they might have these kind of strengths that would come up in different kinds of scenarios that would require some sort of performing or some kind of stuff. Like in Finland, I actually know there's a few sport announcers, broadcasters who really just have their uh, life being super private, but then they just have this kind of public job when they have to talk about sports and be super enthusiastic and stuff, and then they just do that, and they're really good at that. So just that just shows that you can be a really private person, but on the other hand, you can be a great performer in this type of context. In example.
Do you really think you would kind of put yourself under that category?
Yeah, definitely. Like personally, I feel like in many different uh, instances and many different situations in life and in general, I'm a pretty introverted guy. But if a topic, if the topic is about something that I'm really confident in, that I know a lot of stuff, then I can be a really confident performer on that subject when talking about it in a public setting.
I think I've seen that in you a lot. I think, for instance, when you made that huge tutorial series, you talking a whole lot and expressing the fact that you know a lot of the knowledge of your craft, and you were really passionate about that series that you were making. I think that was pretty evident. So it's definitely great to see that from you. I also, not to center it on myself, but I appreciate the comment on the commentary and just sort of kind of expressing myself when I need to. I think what you were saying regarding just expressing yourself when you need to, and being a little more comfortable talking about certain things, that seems like relatively normal. I think in just about any situation, if you're not super comfortable talking about something, it's hard for you to really jut in and really just liven yourself up. Like if like let's say there's somebody who doesn't really know sports too well, and then they go out to a pub and everybody's watching the games and they're throwing around all these technical terms. Like if there are some crazy hockey fans, you might get this because I know you're quite into that, like rating or like time on ice or Corsi 4 or some advanced statistics like that. And then some guy was here just like, I'm just here to get a beer, man. Like this is scary. What are you talking about? I think you've got a lot of different expertise in your own way. And I think the fact that like some people are reserved doesn't mean that they don't like to talk. It's just I prefer to talk about certain things.
And I prefer to talk about just like the real subject at hand. And that's also a common thing in in Finnish people, that even a stereotypical thing actually, that we don't really like small talk that much. We just like to talk business, and I do belong in that category, in that stereotypical category as well. Just basically business and as little small talk as possible.
So
Often.
you guys don't introduce yourselves with like, "Hey, how's the weather? Like, how are you doing?" You
Yeah, that's a rare instance. I mean, you can always talk about the weather, and it is somewhat common in different situations. Maybe in those that where talking about anything is kind of a requirement, if it's a really public setting or something like that. But if it's a one-to-one conversation with not a lot of people around, then there's basically no chance of that turning into a small talk here.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a problem either. I think a lot of people need, I think it's important to have that group of people where you can just be straight with. And I'm honestly kind of flattered is not the right word, but it's interesting to hear that there are different cultures like Finland where that part is sort of just cut out. I think one thing I've been talking about with a lot of people, not necessarily on the podcast, but in general, is that in the States, how social communication technically goes is small talk is this big sort of barrier that a lot of people seem to have to break down. And it's unfortunate when you put it like that because everybody in the back of their head kind of knows, all right, small talk is kind of just getting to know somebody versus when you know how it is, you have a really good friend and the first thing you talk about isn't just like, oh, hey, how's it going? People that you can just open up to a lot faster because you're already on that kind of level. I feel like that might be a huge thing in the States as opposed to like us being so socially distant, not COVID socially distant, but just like I said before, having an abstraction between social communication. Now, do you think Finland has any sort of problem with that as of now? Do you think Finland is a generally more lonely country? Because I remember looking on statistics and one thing I saw that kind of shocked me was Finland was ranked up there as like the happiest country in the world. Now, what are your thoughts on that as somebody who lives there?
Basically, every time that list comes out, and it's an annual list, and every year Finland is in like places one or two. Basically, it's either Denmark or Finland. It's one or two combo every year, and it just gets turned into a meme here in the social circles in the internet as well, and even in the general news whenever there's a comment section under those news articles, it's just full of memes. Basically, it's just like people going like, "Yeah, okay, yeah." It really feels like we're the happiest country in the world. World, cough, cough, wink, wink, and people just take it up with irony. But there is still a grain of truth in all that, and I think what the main point of those lists are is that it basically ranks that how contempt people are with their lives in a certain country. And that is why Finland is at the top of the charts. In Finland, the biggest percentage of people are contempt or somewhat contempt with their lives. Basically, the happiness thrives from the fact that you don't feel like you need more in your lives and you're happy with what you have. That's basically the main point why Finland is at the top of those lists. We just feel fine. We feel like, okay, this is just fine. This is just okay. And it's also point of view looking at the world with kind of realism at hand. Finnish people are really realistic with their expectations regarding life overall, and that also uh, basically translates us being at the top of the chart so that it's a bit misleading in the representation, the list in question. But when you look at the list through the context, through the lens that I just presented to you, it might make a bit more sense why Finland is at the top of the chart.
So, are you one of those people that you would say you're content with yourself in Finland? Like, do you have anything about the country that you really wish would change? And as somebody who's more realistic, I guess there's a lot of things that, you look at other countries in the world and there are a few things that might not even be possible or a lot of change that might just take a lot of time. Is there anything in Finland that you really like point to and like, yeah, I kind of like the fact that we are, I guess you did kind of mention it there with the realism, but what do you think really brings Finland down in a lot of people's minds? And then what do you think brings it up besides realism?
I don't think I can actually give any concrete examples on what should be better, etc.
Okay.
right here at this point, but it's kind of a meme because the list is represented kind of poorly to us through the media as well, because it just talks about the happiness and the just the word happy, 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 happy is thrown everywhere in the media when talking about these rankings and such, and not what parameters were actually used to quantify this sort of happiness. So in Finnish, the word happiness really means like there's a bit of an overemphasis on the happy part. Like you're not just happy, you're more like happy-go-lucky or something like that in Finnish, and so that just heightens the effect that when the rankings and lists are presented in media, it just makes makes every Finnish person who just lives a normal life be like that. So I guess I should be like super happy or something like that when I'm actually just fine, or maybe just normal, average, maybe feeling like average and such. So that's why it gets turned into a meme, because people don't really feel like that happy, but the list in media is represented as being actually like really happy. So I guess that's the best explanation that I can give you right now regarding the the subject.
No, yeah, and I think that's a great elaboration. Like Denmark is also up there with one of the, and you mentioned it beforehand, but it's up there as one of the like happiest countries in the world, and it's also up
Yes.
there as one of the like largest users of antidepressants. So if that statistic is also there, and then you look at that radar, that measure, and it's like, okay, well, what if people are only answering this way because they think like, all right, well, I'm just content, as the way you put it, or what even is like happiness in that regard. Like a lot of people, one big meme in the United States, as we put it, is, oh yeah, like for years and years, it's been like we've been the happiest country in the world. Like we've been the most successful because we're like supposedly the big joke is like we're the busy bees of the world. We work way too hard and like we have very strict schedules. We're very regimented. And then you look at the statistics, and the United States still has like this really, really rough statistic as far as like people not connecting the way they used to. And I'm not necessarily sure if that's a state's problem. There are a lot of different variables, as you were putting it. Like you can't just point to, oh, hey, like, are you happy? You can't just ask that question as it is, because there are so many other parts of that. If you ask me like, oh, hey, what are the reasons the states might be happy or unhappy? I guess I really can't give you a straight answer on that either. I'm still very young and I don't have all the answers on that front.
Yeah, the definition of happiness is a really elusive one, and it's definitely a slippery slope on what actually counts as happiness. In terms of the states, at least when looking at it through the lens of a European, like as a person who've never been to states personally, just kind of views the states as kind of like this historical, in the historical context. Like, I read a lot of Donald Duck comics as a kid, and the have you ever heard of the comic series The Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck? Perhaps.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
If you haven't, you've heard of it. You've heard of it,
I'm
haven't
pretty
you?
sure. Yeah, it's just like he's running around with the three little
Yep.
baby ducks, and they have like all these escapades, and Scrooge is like
Yep.
doing all this wild stuff. Yeah.
The origins of Scrooge McDuck actually in this comic trace back to Scotland in the 1800s, and the reason why Scrooge wanted to go to America was that it was the land of possibilities. You could rise up from basically the bottom of the society to be a great person, and etc., etc. Something like that. That's kind of like the idealized version of the United States. And this idealized version is the one that I learned as a kid when reading the comics. So maybe that is the truth there, or maybe that has hints of truth among the people who live in the states, that it's the land where you can build your own happiness yourself. Because of that, the potential for every individual, I guess, should be higher to achieve all kinds of things in life. So when the bar is set higher, then it might feel like it's harder to reach for the average person in the United States compared to Finland, where it's a lot more balanced in a way. So even though objectively speaking, you could take one individual from the States and then one from Finland, and they might live very similar looking lives, then the person living in the States might feel less happy compared to the person living in the States, just because the bar is set to be at a higher place compared to the Finnish society.
Yeah.
So that's why people might feel less happy in states, and that could reflect to the rankings that we were just discussing.
Yeah. Well, the rankings, like you said, it's the rankings I feel like are subjective. I think the way you just put it there with the bar being set differently for people of different countries, and also a lot of times it just depends on the individual. It's like, what do you want in life? I've spoken to a lot of people who came over from Europe in college, and I actually know a good friend of mine who, for the sake of privacy, won't be named, but he originally immigrated from like Italy, and he was telling me about how he didn't really feel like the States were better or Italy was better. There were just a lot of trade-offs. Like there were things he liked about the States, and he definitely did say, yeah, I wanted to come here. My family wanted to come here because this is where you have to go to make money. And he was telling me about how a lot of people in Europe with master's degrees were still struggling to find jobs. And tying this back into the kind of topic you mentioned with the bar being set, that is the thing about the United States and about like capitalist society in general is that it can, if the opportunity exists, if you have an idea, you can probably do it, especially if you do get the financial part of it down. Contrary to what modern day society might tell you, you can't just throw money at every problem and expect it to go away, but it can help a whole lot. And looking at like the bar and expectations, we kind of talked a little bit about that in the last episode of the show with a friend of mine. I think there's this expectation nowadays of American society and about like just men in general or about like anybody who wants to like work, take on a more masculine persona, chase a dream. There's never really a set finish line outside of the one inside of your head. Like if you reach a goal, that's phenomenal, but then even then when you reach that point, your mind is still going to want to just jump to the next thing. You think, okay, well, now where can I take this? Because even when you've got money, even when you've reached a goal, if you're sitting in the one place for a long time, or if you think, like, okay, my life is finally good, I finally achieved something, I finally have a purpose once I've reached this goal, that's like, okay, you do get there eventually, I would hope, if you accomplish that goal, but that essentially that still doesn't equal happiness is the whole psychological phenomenon because your brain is always going to want to figure out how to do the next thing. And even all the celebrities and whatnot jumping around from like party boats, there's all the talk about how, hey, are they really happy or all of them just depressed because now they're not doing something they feel is meaningful. There's a whole other level to it.
Sure, there's always the next project, yeah, kind of in people's minds,
Yeah,
even after success, just like you put it. But yeah, definitely.
yeah. Right. I wanted to ask you specifically about required military service in Finland, and that's something that you had to go through yourself. How do you think that changed you?
Yeah, the active conscription Finland has, it did definitely put more discipline and constraints to my personality. That's the main thing it basically did. Military service in Finland it's a strong part of the society and culture here. And when we go back to basically in the older times, the military service was basically regarded as kind of a rite of passage for young men here in Finland. It's not that anymore, or not as strongly at least, but it used to be kind of that.
What do you think? Why do you think that changed? Like, why do you think it's not necessarily a like huge thing compared to what it used to be?
Well, basically over the years, the views have, I would say, kind of changed a bit, and it feeling kind of an archaic method in its own right to still be present here today. From EU members, I think only Austria and Greece also have it, and Finland is the only other country that still does it. I guess that might be one of the ways, like having options to do that. Like it's mandatory for only males, then there's two options on top of the actual military service. You basically have three options, and these were taught to me already at a really young age, like basically as a 5-year-old. As a 5-year-old, I was basically already told that I have three options after I turn 18. It's either go to the military service or either go to do a civil service or then just go to jail. That's the third option. It's you have three options actually. It's not like which are mandatory for young males, like basically speaking. It's either military service, civil service, or just jail time.
Now, is that like a set sentence, or are you just in jail until like, hey, you are gonna agree to do this, you're gonna stay here?
No, no, no. It's you go to jail. You're there for 173 days, and that's it. After that, you don't actually have to do the military service or civil service. You can basically do your service in jail. Just sit there for 173 days, and that's it.
What? So are there a lot of people who just say, no, screw it, like they take the 173 days and just don't do military?
I actually don't have any stats in mind regarding that. I don't know what that is, but certainly as a 5-year-old, hearing that just basically made me really scared that okay, I just have to do this because I don't want to go to jail. and yeah,
That's just freaking insane to me. When I think of the required military service, and I know you just mentioned the other countries in the EU that have to do it, like Greece and Austria, if I remember correctly, if I heard that. So
yeah, as
there,
far as I'm aware.
yeah, there's definitely a few. And even outside the EU, I know like Israel also does it. And to an extent, like I get why some countries do it. Israel, in their case, I'm not going to get political about everything that's been going on, but you know the situation there. They, I think a lot of people would look at that and say, okay, when you have all these countries around you that are constantly trying to kill you, then maybe that's somewhat justified. I do think that those countries being in the like the union and everyone being in this big group, it's a little different nowadays if you don't even do it. The more I think about it, the more like questions are popping into my head. But that's interesting, and it's always been like that too. Is just
Yeah, I can tell you more facts about this. So basically, you in Finland, basically you go to a draft event on the year you turn 18, and ideally you would do the service when you're 19, the year after that. But you can't stall. Actually, you can just say that okay, I'm not fit for the service like right now. Can I please delay the service a bit? And you can actually delay it until you're 29 years old. And at that point, it's like mandatory basically. Like you just have to go to the service unless you still get away somehow. I don't know actually technically how, but in example, the NHL player Mikko Rantanen actually was just 29 years old, and he just still refused as a 29-year-old to go to the service, and he had to pay a huge fine for it just recently, actually, to avoid doing the service. And I don't know how much the fine was actually. I think it was like in tens, even hundreds of thousands, if I'm not mistaken. I don't actually know the exact
it's
number for
probably
that,
like a slap on
but
the wrist considering he plays in the NHL.
yeah.
No.
But then on top of that, there are uh, groups of people who just outright refuse to do the military service. In example, Jehovah's Witnesses, they have had the right to just not go to the service since 2019 because even before 2019 they just used to refuse going to the service based on their religious beliefs, and they got away with that. They just delayed it until they were 30 and then they were off the hook anyways. So after 2019 it's just already uh, been a case where they just can just not go there, and it's just less paperwork that way.
Does Finland have a separation of church and state? Like, can the government not tell the church or any religious group what to do?
Yes, they have a separation.
Interesting, because that's something that I feel like a lot of people, myself anyways, whenever I've heard of like Finland nowadays and religion, it's been a lot of talk about how the Nordic countries used to be super religious, but now it's kind of broken off. So it's just interesting to hear that like religious authorities have that kind of power in the States.
At least here in Finland, it's only basically around Christmas time when you see any kind of religion in regular basis. Over here, it's not really that religious anymore. Not by a long shot.
Yeah, I mean, that's just changing in the times. The States are pretty much the same way. Like we used to be heavily, heavily Christian, but that's sort of fallen out of our culture at this point. I mean, it's a lot more secular than it used to be, anyways. I think there are a lot of
Well,
people.
yeah, I'd say here in Finland, a lot of people are still raised as Christians and belong to the church, but they don't act religiously at all, basically, even though they might be part of the church, like on paper, but they're not really religious. They just might want to be part of church just like in symbolic fashion, just because they were raised as Christians, but they don't actually they're not actually religious at all.
Yeah. I actually, if you don't mind, I kind of want to stay on not necessarily the religious point, but one thing that I was thinking about when we were talking, like when I knew I wanted to kind of talk to you more about the country itself and about Finland, a lot of people associate religion with cultural identity and with even a big part of their country's identity. Like Georgia, the country out in like the Middle East, and they consider that a big part of their identity. Like there are a couple of preachers in Georgia who are these absolute superstars. Like a lot of people know them, and he encouraged a lot of people to have kids and whatnot. So in a lot of countries like Finland, where religion has sort of gone to the wayside, do you think that like Finland has a lot of aspects of its culture that sort of make up for that? Like, do you feel like there's a lot of cultural traditions or holidays or like national pride even that sort of fill the void of religion?
Yes, I do, definitely.
Right.
I mean, you can see that in hockey, basically. It's it's very intense here in Finland. Like the national pride in uh, in hockey, definitely, and facing off against any other country. It's we take that kind of stuff like pretty seriously, actually.
I'm I'm jealous in a way. Hockey is such an awesome sport, and like I'm glad the NHL exists in the States, but we don't have that kind of national pride for overseas sports. And I kind of wish we did because I love getting hyped up about that. Like I've seen videos from Keluke in our community about like tier three German hockey leagues, and everybody's like shoulder to shoulder, like stomping in the stands like crazy. I'm like, that is insane. And it's like this in a way, it's almost like a religious experience. Like it's a big thing, and everyone just seems like, yeah, this is a moment where we're going crazy for it. I really wish like we had more of a cultural identity like that. Especially, I went to a part of the States where hockey was absolutely huge. And even though we had such a small arena, like that was the one thing everybody looked forward to. It was like, all right, we're going to the hockey games. Student section's all getting crazy. We're all just acting like morons, but it's great. It was it was a really fun time, and I just think that like hockey coming over here is such a blessing. I think sports in a weird way. All right, let me ask you this: do you think sports in a way kind of are a religion? Do you think they have really taken that place?
Well, you could stretch this a bit further. This is not a real take on my behalf, but let me just introduce you to this kind of point of view a bit here. This is a playful point of view. Don't take this seriously at all or
Okay.
anything like that. But in the older times, people used to settle their differences by waging actual war on each other, and maybe sports, particularly national level encounters, like in hockey. Maybe it's good to have sports so that we can kind of like relieve our internal aggressions, if you might call them that, by just watching a sports game between two countries on TV, having the national pride of your country on one of the sides, and then see if you win or lose. And then that's that. People can go home, can go to sleep happy, and be like, okay, that was that was the situation today. Maybe we'll meet up next time and win, or maybe we'll try to win again next time, something like that.
Unless
So sports has kind of like replaced this feeling that people just have to see who's the better country, so to speak. That's my playful take on this. That should not be taken seriously.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's hockey at the very least. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting like conspiracy to play around with, and I don't want to say there's any like serious truth to that, but when you look at, I guess, a lot of like serious European soccer fans, there have been crazy scenarios where sports have risen to that level of absolute insanity. Like you can still find videos of soccer
Yeah,
fans going absolutely insane. If you've ever seen what's the channel? Oversimplified. He talks one time about how like El Salvador and Honduras, they literally one time started a war over like who won a couple of soccer games. It's like
yeah, it can
absurd.
go to that. Even in hockey, it's pretty much a religion in the Quebec area.
Yeah.
After all,
Have you ever seen hockey players talk about how fighting is actually like not dangerous? Like there are hockey players who actually love the feeling of fighting and like they talk to each other afterwards after they finish punching somebody. It's like, "Oh yeah, good fight." It's like they mutually accept it and it's like an adrenaline rush.
yeah, I can see that for sure.
Yeah. It's just interesting when you put it like that. I think sports and I'm not seriously, gonna follow up on the point of like, oh yeah, like this is how we release it. But I think that sports do just have a lot of benefits in that sense in general. I think that's why we all love watching them, is because like you said, it's a form of like just getting to know a lot of other people or having a side, but not in a way that rises to serious conflict unless, like you said, you're an insane European soccer fan, if you're some Eagles fans here in the States, but I
Mm.
digress. I'm a big sports nut here myself. At least I used to be. I really would love to get back into watching it. I just love the way that it's created this common hobby. I just love going out to like events with people, and it's just an easy thing to talk about. Kind of what you were getting at earlier about cutting through the small stuff. You can just walk up to a bar and then there's a game on, and then instead of just saying how's it going, you could be like, oh, like how are the birds doing, huh? After they just blew like a 21-point lead. It's just like easy to be able to talk about something like that in the same way that I feel like maybe something like religion. You don't go up to a bar and it's like, so what's your opinion on God, or like, do you believe happens when you go to the afterlife? It's like, dude, I'm just here to get a freaking drink. Like, what are you talking about? Uh,
Yeah, I would just leave that conversation if that happens here. There
yeah.
are people here in Finland though, just who just who approach people on the street and just like, do you want to talk about God? It's a thing here in Finland too, actually. So you can
Well,
just be polite and okay, not today, thank you,
yeah.
goodbye.
It's a thing everywhere. We had a lot of that where I went to college in West Michigan, which was hugely Christian evangelist, and even now in the part of the states I live in now, I used to be a part of it when I was in Western Michigan. I think the one thing religion does really well, especially nowadays, is it gives you a lot of meaning. I think that that's why a lot of people are arguing that Christianity is sort of resurging in some areas, about like how in England it's being a big comeback. It's just because it has a lot of group mentality. It's like you said with Finland, especially. You guys have a lot of national pride and you have some form of unity that I feel like us here in the States don't have. I've just loved talking to Finnish people about all these little cultural nuances, like hearing about you guys with saunas, how it's this big cultural thing, but about hockey and about like all these different things you guys do. And then you talk to people in Denmark about all these things you can do. And even some people I've talked to in India, they have this big tradition where this one guy's from, where they make a giant Santa Claus statue during the holidays, and then at New Year's they like light it on fire and burn it down. Just like crazy, crazy stuff like that. But we don't have a lot of stuff like that here in the States, at least not stuff that's sort of artificially overhyped, like the New Year's celebration we do. They make it a big thing on TV, and then everybody goes and stands out there for 8 hours and you can't move and go to the bathroom. So it's like, is this really worth hyping in the same way, man? So
Yeah, one of the factors in that is definitely the linguistic isolation of Finland. The language is not the same. It doesn't come from the same Indo-European language tree that many other European languages come from. It's actually a Finno-Ural language tree, which basically only consists from major languages only Finnish and Estonian these days, and pretty much nothing else. Hungarian actually is also a distant relative of the same language tree, but the linguistic isolation has really tightened up the Finnish community over the centuries. I believe that to be true.
Yeah, because Finland is a very rarely spoken language these days. I think there's only like 5 million speakers of it worldwide, and I imagine a large part of those are in Finland.
Probably like 99%, yeah.
Yeah, so no, it's a crazy thing too. That was one thing that another one of my European buddies was telling me about was how he thought that the different languages were really a big unifier. Because in Europe, this is something that a lot of people in the States don't understand. We can just drive a few hours from state to state and it's like you're still in the same country. But then in Finland, you drive a couple of hours and then all of a sudden you're in Sweden or you're in Russia and there's like new borders, new laws, new like languages. So I think that really puts a lot more emphasis on that like cultural unity and sort of identity of okay, we're here and this is what we do. At least that's what I
Yeah, I mean, based on size, Finland might as well, it could just be a one state in the US, but in terms of its contents, very distinct from anything else that's around it, as you said.
right on. So allow me to change things up a bit here. So well, we were talking about it earlier in the show. You were mentioning some things about your hobbies and whatnot. What are some things that you feel you've taken from speedrunning and doing that as a part of an online community?
Well, I started as a moderator for the Sly Cooper community in 2019, and at that point, I didn't yet have any kinds of formal responsibilities in any other parts of life yet at that point. But after that, I did get into being active in a student association here in the university where I'm attending afterwards. And I did actually end up growing a very sizable amount of experience on that front. And I think the teamwork and decision making skills did improve when being a part of the mod team in the Sly Cooper community first in those early years. And I think eventually the skills on the student organization front kind of caught up with the skills that I learned from being a moderator in the speedrun community. And it kind of turned the other way around actually in the later years, in the more recent years, like maybe within the past 2 years, an example, I've actually been able to improve the decision making and rhetoric skills and just the argumentative side of things in the when being a moderator in the Sly Cooper speedrunning scene uh, from the experiences that I eventually gained in the student organization part of things side of things in the university. So it just kind of flipped the other way around. So first moderation skills helped me to learn the ropes in real life student organization stuff, and then recently that experience has helped further along the mod side of stuff. So it's just been a very healthy combo all around within these past 6 years or so.
No, that's honestly really inspiring to hear in a lot of regards. I think that a lot of people would immediately point to speedrunning as this hobby that doesn't really have any merit, that it's something that doesn't teach you a lot. I was talking about this earlier with some people in my Discord just today about how I felt as of late in my life. But I think speedrunning, like, if it's something that you genuinely enjoy, if it's given you a lot of your own merit, if it's helped you with decision making and the sort of like leadership part and other things like you were talking about, I think it's
Yeah.
like, why would you put it down? You know, like if you're still finding benefit from it and you genuinely enjoy doing it, like that's absolutely great. I think in the same way that, hey, if like sports are something that you really love doing, if this gives you an excuse to go talk to people, to go hang out, then by all means, I think that's really awesome. I think it's encouraging for a lot of people who maybe have taken up that hobby to really know, like, hey, What matters is that you feel like your time isn't being wasted. And if you feel like you're having a great time talking to people, that's really what matters.
Yeah, another example that popped up in my mind is just simple project management skills. Like, I used to have a somewhat difficult time of finishing projects back in the days before I was speedrunning. But some big projects have taken place during my times as a speedrunner. You mentioned the tutorial series as one of these examples, and definitely just being around the speedrunning community has kind of helped me to be better at finishing my projects that I start eventually to a certain degree. So that's definitely one improvement that the speedrunning community has brought to me over the years.
Would you say there's anything that you wish you had gained out of it or like wish you had done?
uh, well, back in the summer of 2021, I used to stream a lot, maybe in the hopes of being partnered in Twitch, but that ultimately didn't happen in 2021. So I kind of just let that idea go to rest and not really try to pursue that uh, anymore afterwards after that. So I don't have any aspirations regarding that anymore. But that was the time when I saw that okay, maybe there's a chance to push this forward. But then it didn't happen, and I don't mind that it didn't happen.
For what it's worth, watching you stream a whole lot was really fun, especially with your knowledge of the game. I felt like that if you were to push for it for an extended period of time, I feel like you could have reached that point. But I also think that kind of letting that idea go to the wayside, if you've come to a point of peace with it, if you realize, all right, like maybe this isn't something I need to have happen or that even at this point I want to have happen, that's a really mature thing to be able to do. I think some people try to hold on to some things that maybe aren't worth it. I think it's just like I said before, it's important to really understand where your own priorities are. And I think that speedrunning in a way is something that can help with that. I think like you said, being unable to finish like big projects, that's something I had a bit of trouble doing, but speedrunning kind of unironically taught me how to do that. It kind of taught me more about the rewards at the end if you stick through something, even if it's struggling at the meantime when you're resetting 100 times or when it just feels like that maybe somebody doesn't care one day or you don't care as much about it one day. I think it proved to me that it is important to be able to stick through with something and just really see it out. And I'm happy to hear that somebody of your experiences had similar thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. Well said.
Mhm. Do you have any advice for any young men who right now have speedrunning as a hobby?
Oh, just have patience. That's basically the number one thing. Like not to encourage people to doing that, but just basically as a general reminder about just morals and ethics in speedrunning and whatnot. If you're starting out as a speedrunner, if you're a young man, and such, when talking about cheating in the context of speedrunning, usually the people who cheat the most in speedrunning in general are not the best of the best and are not the worst of the worst. They're not even the most mediocre ones. The most prominent cheaters in speedrunning actually are the ones who are just on the cusp of greatness, who are just like, yeah, maybe near the top, but not like really realistic record contenders, or they would be if they, just as I said before, would have more patience. So my advice would be to not rush things, just put in the work, put in the hard work, and eventually that will have the chance of getting you somewhere where you would ideally want yourself to be. But cutting corners, taking shortcuts, that's not the right way to go. You actually do have to put in the work and not try to reach the finish line before you've earned to reach the finish line.
Yeah, no, patience is virtue, as they do say, and the more time you put into something, I feel like in the long run, that's going to be better. something is going to feel way better if you actually do put in that work and you do put in that effort, as opposed to, oh, hey, like I can just snap my fingers and now this goal is suddenly achieved. And so I feel like that's way less rewarding of a feeling, as you said. What's the most rewarded you've ever felt from speedrunning? Like, was there one run you ever completed and was like, yes, like this is so great that I finally did this?
Um, Maybe the 2021-87 Ultimate Gauntlet back from 2018. Probably, probably that. That was my biggest grind that I ever did. If I recall correctly. That was the time when the shadow pounces were found. Ironically, I'm in a shadows podcast here and talking about
I
found
wasn't going to make the joke,
finding
but
of
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, the Norwegian speedrunner slash glitch hunter slash strat finder Furball found shadow pounces in the summer of 2018, which revolutionized the ultimate gauntlet for Slide 3 speedrunning. The top time was a 2:37 before the shadow pounces were found, and it was found that the shadow pounces could save up to 16 seconds in ultimate gauntlet. So basically, when you subtract that 2:37 and then you take 16 seconds off of that, you get a 2:21. So what I ended up doing is a lengthy grind to get to that 2:21, and I got like 7 PBs of 2:22s that just went a bit lower and lower and lower each time until I finally got to 2:21, and that felt like kind of like the end of the road. It took up until Hexu found push boosting before the time was beaten without thief reflexes and paraglide proxies, which was over a year later after that.
When it takes that man coming in to really push it even further, you know that the time you set beforehand was good. Yeah, I think it's really valuable just besides the fact that you did it, but also the fact that you can look back on it and saying, yeah, here's the kind of runs that I got, here's the points that I pushed to, here's where it felt like the end of the road. I feel like having a lot of distinguishable markers and milestones looking back on a journey like that can be really valuable. I talked a little bit in the past about like some personal runs that I've done on this channel and over the time with this community. I think that just having goals when I was just recently doing 2.8 or even back in the day when I was doing 4.1, I had like some times when it just didn't feel like I was really into it. But then getting closer and closer to that and realize that you can still do this and you do have something to shoot for, I thought was really valuable. Just another thing that I feel like this hobby really ended up teaching me. It's something that was really valuable to have around. All right. Well, that runs through the list of questions I had for the show today. But Remo, I mean, this has been a amazing time. I think that you've had a lot to say here, and I think that it's been great to really get to know you a lot better. I really appreciate coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah. Do you want to tell the audience a little bit more about where they can find you and what you do before we close things out?
All right. I do have a Twitch channel at Remo Christian with the underscore, and a YouTube channel by the name of Remo SR. And that's about it. I really don't have any other socials to add to that list.
Well, you got the ones that matter. And believe me, everybody who's listening in, if you haven't seen what this guy does, very knowledgeable. And whatever time he does manage, even, nowadays, he makes the best of it. This guy is really amazing, as evidenced by this. He's taught me a lot. That's the other thing. We didn't really, I didn't get to talk about it today, but I guess I'll say it now for the sake of it. You were the reason why I like even got into running Thieves in Time at all with that tutorial series. And I really think a lot of people, myself included, like look up to him, man. So the stuff you've been doing, your time was well spent. And I really thank you for introducing to something that I think had a lot of positive impact on my life.
Oh, it's good to hear. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no worries, man. Thank you again for coming onto the show. That's again, Remo's socials and everything, his Twitch channel, his YouTube. Those will be linked down in the description, whether you're listening to this on Spotify or YouTube, but it'll be around. So yeah, until next time, that will be it for the episode today. Thank you guys all for listening in. Remo, thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it.